The time for the big meal came. Jesus took his place at the table, and so did his chosen 12. He said to them,
I have wanted to eat this Passover meal with you before I suffer. I will never eat this special meal again until it is made perfect in the kingdom of God.
Then he took a big goblet of wine and he thanked God for it. And he said,
Share this out among yourselves, because I will never drink wine again until the kingdom of Jesus comes.
Then he took out a loaf of bread, and he thanked God for it, and he broke it. Then he gave the bread to them and said,
This is my body. Look, one of my friends is going to betray me. It is decided that I must go, but woe to the person who betrays me.
Then the 12 began to ask who it was who could possibly betray him. They started to squabble over which one of them was the best and most important person. But Jesus said,
Other people like to be important, and some people say, aren't you great, when somebody tells them what to do. You can't behave like that. The most important one of you must behave like a new kid in school, and your leader must behave like a waiter who takes orders, and not like the diner who sits there and demands things. Look at me. I behave like your servant, but my Father gave me a kingdom, and I will give you a kingdom. There you can indeed sit and dine. You 12 will head the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, listen. The devil demands that you are all shaken out to see what you are made of, but I have prayed that you will have faith, and once you've sorted yourself out, you will help the others.
Then Simon Peter said,
Lord, I am ready. I will go to prison for you, or die for you.
Before daylight wakes the first bird, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times that you have ever met me.
Jesus went out to a nearby park called the Hill of Olives, and his followers went with him. When he got there, he said,
Pray that you are not put to the test.
Then he went a few meters away and he knelt and prayed.
Father, if you are willing, take this goblet away from me, yet your will be done and not mine.
Then he got up and found his friends were sleeping.
Why are you sleeping? Get up. Pray that you may not be put to the test.
While he was saying this, with no warning, a crowd of people came up to them, led by Judas, one of his 12 friends. Judas tried to kiss him, and Jesus said,
Judas, is it with a kiss that you are betraying me, the Son of Man?
Then one of his friends took out a sword and cut the ear off the slave of the high priest. Jesus said,
Don't do that.
and he healed the ear. Then Jesus said,
Are you coming out at night as if I was a bandit who hid away from you? I've been teaching every day in the temple, and you've been there too. I'm not hard to find, but this is your hour. It is dark night, and you act by the power of darkness.
Then they grabbed him and led him off to the high priest's house, and Simon Peter followed a good way behind them. It was cold, and they had a little fire in the middle of the yard to keep warm, and all the servants and hangers-on gathered round it, including Peter. A slave girl saw his face in the glow of the fire, and she said,
This man was with Jesus.
but Peter denied it, saying,
No, girl, I don't know him.
Later, another person caught sight of his face and said,
You were one of them.
and Peter said,
Man, I was not.
An hour later, another bloke said,
You are another person from Galilee. Surely you were with Jesus.
and Peter said,
Man, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Then the cock crowed, and Peter remembered what the Lord had said. Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. He left the yard and cried bitterly. Meanwhile, the men holding Jesus began to jeer at him. They beat him up. They put a blanket over his head and hit him and laughed.
You're supposed to be a prophet. Go on, tell us the name of the man who hit you.
As the day dawned, the leaders of the people and the priests met as a council and had Jesus brought before them. They asked,
"Are you the God's appointed one, the Messiah?"
Jesus said,
You will not believe a word I say, and if I ask you questions, you will not be answer. This is what I will say from now on. The Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of God.
So the leaders said,
"Well, we have heard what we need to hear from his own mouth."
Then the council all got up and took Jesus before the Roman governor of Judea, who was called Pilate. They said,
"This man Jesus is trying to stir up a rebellion against Rome. He told us not to pay our taxes for the Roman emperor, and he says he is God's appointed one, that is, our king."
So Pilate asked Jesus,
"Are you the king of the Jews?"
and Jesus said,
Those are your words.
So Pilate said to the chief priests and to the crowd that had gathered,
"I can't see any basis of what you're accusing this man of. You brought this man to me because you said that he was stirring up a rebellion against Rome. I have examined him while you were here, and I can't see that he is guilty of any of the things you accuse him of. Certainly he is not guilty of anything that means he should be put to death. I'll have him beaten and set him free."
Then all of the council and people shouted,
"Put Jesus to death. Release Barabbas instead."
Barabbas was a terrorist condemned to death. Pilate really wanted to let Jesus go, and he spoke again, but the people just kept shouting,
"Torture him to death. Torture him to death."
A third time, Pilate said,
"What bad things has he done? There is no reason to sentence him to death. I will have him beaten and let him go."
but the people kept on and on shouting for him to be crucified, tortured to death. So Pilate gave his official verdict that Jesus should be put to death, and he let the terrorists go. 2 others, criminals, were being put to death that day. They crucified all 3 at a place called the Skull, with Jesus on the middle cross. Then Jesus said,
Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing.
The soldiers gambled for his clothes. Some stood watching quietly, but the leaders laughed.
"He saved others, healed them. If he is really God's appointed one, let him save himself."
and the Roman soldiers jeered at him, offering him vinegar, sour wine, and saying,
"If you are king of the Jews, save yourself."
There was an inscription above him. "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals kept jeering too.
"Some Messiah, save yourself."
The other said,
"Aren't you afraid of God? We too are dying here. The difference is that we really did do wrong, but Jesus has done nothing. Jesus, remember me when you get to your kingdom."
Jesus replied,
I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise.
Jesus was on the cross by noon, and the whole area became dark. At 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out loudly,
Father, I place my spirit in your hands.
Then he died. The soldier in charge of the execution praised God and said,
"This man was innocent."
The crowds who had gathered to watch went home showing how sorry they were. But those who knew him, including the woman who had come from Galilee, stood a little way away, watching.
Now one member of the council was a good man called Joseph of Arimathea.
He had thought what the council had done was very wrong. He went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. He took it down from the cross and wrapped it up in linen and laid it in a new rock tomb. The woman from Galilee followed and saw how Jesus was laid to rest and where. By now the sun had gone down, which made it the Sabbath, and nobody could do anything which counted as work. So the woman went home, intending to lay Jesus out properly on the Sunday.